The question isn't so much what happens on day one. You know, Galaxy Digital just came out with a research report. They think $14 billion will go into the ETF in the first year. If that happens, what does that do to the price?
How much will one Bitcoin be worth after BlackRock's ETF approval? Anthony Pompliano went on CNBC this morning to explain. And before we talk about what's next with Bitcoin's price, let's just be very clear on how the Bitcoin price got here.
I mean, look, to understand really where Bitcoin is right now, you got to go back to 2018, 2019. Bitcoin had been up to 20,000 in the bull market. It drew all the way down to $3,000. What happened there, and Stanley Druckenmiller said it was the thing that convinced him to go buy Bitcoin, is that none of the Bitcoiners really sold. About 80% of the people who owned it at 20,000 still owned it at 3,000.
56% long term right now. So there's no supply for it either.
It's highly illiquid. 76% hasn't been sold in the last year. 56% hasn't been sold in the last 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And really what we saw, what drove Bitcoin's price from that $3,000 bottom to $69,000, I mean, 23x in about 3 years, is that there was a supply and a demand shock. And we had printing of money, low interest rates, and we also got the halving. We look like we're headed right back to that. Right now, we do have high interest rates, and they're trying not to print money. But we have a $33.5 trillion debt. They're trying to fund 2 proxy wars. We have the southern border issue. We've got all sorts of inflation they're still trying to combat. And so what's likely to happen here is that they're going to have to return to loose monetary policy. When they do that, it is likely to coincide with the Bitcoin halving.
So Pomp backs up what we discussed in our interview yesterday, that long-term holders aren't selling.
And that's a mind-blowing thing to see. Long-term holders are at an all-time high, showing that they are more, and it's still an uptrend, more confident than they have ever been before in history of Bitcoin. And the short-term holders are at an all-time low.
And as we stand today, Bitcoin soars as BlackRock moves closer to launching their spot Bitcoin ETF. The iShares Bitcoin Trust, i.e. the BlackRock Bitcoin Trust, has been listed on the DTCC, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, which clears NASDAQ trades, and the ticker will be IBTC, all part of the process to bringing an ETF to market.
One of the things people have to remember is the best investors in the world act completely differently than the herd. And so right now, the herd is saying we're risk off. Every great investor I know is going risk on. They're buying these assets at suppressed prices because they know what's going to happen. We're going to return to loose monetary policy and prices are going to go back up.
Are we though? Higher for longer, higher for longer, higher for longer.
You eventually run into math, and ultimately you have a $33.5 trillion debt. You added $500 billion in the last month. We're sending hundreds of billions of dollars around for these proxy wars. If you're going to continue to raise the national debt, you're going to have to inflate it away. And so loose monetary policy is going to be the standard over the coming.
So understanding where we are today, how much now will one Bitcoin be worth? Best guess. And keep in mind, anything is possible with cryptocurrency. Never invest more than you are willing to lose. But long term, even Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, admits that the growth of this asset is undeniable.
Bitcoin has never felt really all that different from gold. If you explained to me that gold was a really important part of human culture, I'd understand it. As an Armenian, I know, I for whatever reason, just love gold. We have a cultural affinity for this shiny piece of metal, the shiny rock. And it's been built over years and years and years. And there are plenty of investors who won't touch it because they feel like it's not a great asset. But there's a whole heck of a lot of people who have a strong cultural affinity for it. And I think Bitcoin is in a similar camp. Maybe it's a different generation. Maybe it's more sort of technology-oriented folks. But at the end of the day, I'm investing in asteroid mining companies. And one thing I'm certain of is we're never going to find a bunch of new Bitcoin on an asteroid. There's a bunch of precious metals we will end up finding. But at the end of the day, it's a kind of asset that requires a sort of conviction in it as a store of value. And for a whole heck of a lot of people, there has been, at least as of yesterday, another flight to it. But look, I invest with the long-term horizon. That's one of the nice things about this job is I don't have to worry about markets day to day or hour to hour. I make every investment with at least a 10-year time horizon.
So how much are experts speculating that one Bitcoin could be worth directly after the approval? Well, honestly, it all depends on how much money flows into the ETFs. If no money flows into these ETFs, then obviously nothing will change. But on the other hand, all these companies are going to have their sales forces now selling.
You're going to have Invesco's sales force, BlackRock sales force, Cathie Wood's sales force, Fidelity sales force, all out selling Bitcoin.
Bitcoin could rise, per the analysis of Matrixport, could rise to between 42,000 and 56,000 if the ETF is approved, and this prediction is based on the potential inflows of as much as 24 billion. And finally, Pompliano answers the question, how much will one Bitcoin be worth?
Go back to this idea of, and we've talked about it on the broadcast a lot, this sort of buy the rumor, sell the news situation, which is if in fact this ETF exists, there's a big announcement, is that a great day for Bitcoin, or is that baked into the price and you needed to have gotten there beforehand and actually goes down afterwards?
I think this is a great point. The halvings historically have been this like buy the rumor, sell the news events. The ETF probably is going to be something like that, where if you saw this fake news, I guess it was, where the ETF got approved, but it really wasn't approved. Right. Basically, price went up thousands of dollars in a few minutes, then drew right back down as soon as it was determined that it was fake. And so you probably will get some sort of short-term movement just out of the excitement. But I do think that this anticipation is obviously driving the price up. It was 25,000, now it's 34,000. You're just eating into what was potential returns on the approval. Right. And so the question isn't so much what happens on day one. Right. Galaxy Digital just came out with a research report. They think $14 billion will go into the ETF in the first year. If that happens, what does that do to the price? Their expectation is that's going to drive the price 75% higher. And so that's just their estimation around the ETF. If that's true, that's a pretty big price move for an asset that's already hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap.
If you're interested in learning more and making money in cryptocurrency, click subscribe. You do not want to miss a daily video. And by the way, breaking news, Sam Bankman-Fried will testify. He will take the stand at his criminal trial as soon as Thursday, which will be his direct attempt to appeal to the jurors in his bid to prove that he did not commit or conspire to commit fraud. Also just announced, crypto lender BlockFi ends bankruptcy with a plan to repay customers. So another way to say this is that BlockFi has emerged from bankruptcy. Emergence is when a firm that previously entered bankruptcy successfully reorganizes its balance sheet so that it's ready to repay its creditors. And who can withdraw today? While the company's custodial wallet customers can submit a withdrawal request today, BlockFi's BIA interest-bearing account and loan customers aren't expected to receive initial distributions until early 2024. And in altcoin news, Polygon has launched its POL token contract on Ethereum to eventually replace Matic. So we know that the ticker symbol for Polygon, Matic, is going away. It's switching to POL. And as described by them, POL is the next generation token that can power a vast ecosystem of ZK-based L2 chains. It does that via a native restaking protocol that allows POL holders to validate multiple chains and perform multiple roles on each of those chains, turning POL into a hyper-productive token. So that explains the reasoning for the upgrade, the switch. Like always, see you tomorrow.